In the name of the one true God, Creator, Sustainer, Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. How often does a congregation find itself in the position of hosting a road-weary missionary come from distant lands to share the faith? That was a question that was asked in the commentary that I've been using this season from the Gospel of Matthew. It instantly made me think of Father John Beach. Who is he, you ask? About 3 months ago, I got an email from the diocese asking me if I would be willing to meet with a priest who is on sabbatical. He is riding his bicycle from Westport to Saugus, Massachusetts this summer. I said I'd be willing to meet with the guy, figuring it wouldn't be any real big deal, and I could meet the guy for an hour or two. Fine, whatever. And then I didn't hear anything for weeks. And I wondered if something happened and he'd canceled his trip and, he wasn't coming. Finally, I got an email from him saying he would be riding out to the valley tomorrow, meaning the next day. He's staying with friends in North Bend for the night. And could we meet at St. Clair's? He was going to stop all along the way and talk to folks as he journeyed his way across the country. So we agreed to meet on the Monday that he was riding out here, which is my normal day off. But I was intrigued enough by this guy to say, sure, I'll come on out. What time will work? Now, I can't even imagine riding over the Rocky Mountains in a bicycle. I can't even imagine riding over Snoqualmie Pass on a bicycle. But the first thing that Father John did when he arrived was to ask to plug his battery in. He had an electric bike, which made me think the guy might have a chance. It has still been this arduous journey. I've been following along on his blog, and it's still been really hard. His bike's broken down, he's had to been schlepped along the way, find bicycle repair people, feed him, and drive him and his bike up and down some of the byways of America. We spent a couple hours together, and I showed him around, and Cindy and Larry were here. I got to meet him, and he got a tour of our Essentials stockroom. He was pretty impressed. As of Friday, day 49, Father John was at the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. Okay, that's how far he's gotten. This is from his blog. The Prairie Wind Casino is located within the Pine Ridge Reservation, 30 miles from the town of Pine Ridge. The reservation itself is the size of the state of Connecticut, with a population of 50,000 people. The town itself consists of around 4,000 people, and it is the only town of any size within the reservation's boundaries. It also has the distinction of being the poorest town in the state of South Dakota. Poorest town. I stayed, he says, as the guest of the Center of Reconciliation, which has been located in town for many years and has earned the respect and support of both the tribal authorities and of state agencies. I am grateful to Pastor Dan Johnson, who serves as their director, who welcomed me and was very generous with his time. When I arrived, he drove me around the town to show me how the community has evolved. There is a tribal hospital and some lovely houses surrounding it. These houses stand in marked contrast to the majority of dwellings one sees scattered around the town centers. There are houses which are boarded up because the crystal meth once produced in them has seeped into the walls and made the houses uninhabitable. There are 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom houses, one housing at least an extended family of 20. Many homes lack heating and plumbing. In my conversation with Dan and some of the staff at the center, I have discovered that the violence, cynicism, greed, racism, and cruelty which have shaped this reservation have been integrated into the culture which now resides here. It is understandable that the Lakota people should be suspicious and hostile to the white government which has created this state of affairs. What is not so obvious is that this cynicism and greed has become a defining quality of the tribal government as well. There is much graft and misdirection of funding evident in the running of this town. One can see how obstructionist tactics in the pursuit of power demonstrated in our federal government can be scaled down and operative in this much smaller government. The center where I'm staying serves as a shelter for the large homeless population here. The city has recently closed the municipal shelter over arguments about funding. The churches have picked up the slack and have been ensuring that this vulnerable segment of the population does not die of exposure in the heat of summer or the freezing cold of winter. When I arrived here last night, I discovered 12 homeless persons and 7 dogs hanging around the entrance to the center. They were all amused by me, my bike, and my little trailer entering their turf. The Center for Reconciliation does not encourage work trips from outside groups. They are not interested in having outside people waltzing in and fixing something. They are, however, interested in having an interested person come to hear the stories of those whose lives have been shaped by the history of this place. There are many examples of both cruelty and courage to be found in this place. You can find people who have been a source of hope and resilience in a time when this is a scarce commodity. There has recently been an Institute of Higher Education established on the reservation. Those who have left Pine Ridge to study elsewhere in the region discover a racist and hostile environment. So scholars from neighboring universities come and teach in town, which enables folks to actually earn a college degree in a familiar and safe environment. End of blog. When we hear today's gospel reading, we often think that all we have to do to be aligned with God's hopes and dreams is to find a little one who is thirsty. Something akin to handing a buck to somebody on the street corner asking for help. This commentary also suggested that those little ones were actually the disciples, not little children. In the grand scheme of things, I wonder if handing a drink of water is really all that helpful. Handing out a buck on a corner is really all that helpful. This story teaches me more about the simple act of hospitality. Social justice advocate Dorothy Day once said, "A custom existed among the first generations of Christians when faith was a bright fire that warmed more than those who kept it burning. In every house, then, a room was kept ready for any stranger who might ask for shelter. It was even called the stranger's room. Not because these people thought they could trace something of someone they loved in the stranger who used it, not because the man or woman to whom they gave shelter reminded them of Christ, but because, plain and simple, was the stupendous fact that he or she was Christ." It seems to me that Father John was able to be welcomed because he didn't fix anything. He came to listen and understand, both things that Jesus did quite often in his ministry. He may have been the road-weary missionary who might have brought Jesus to these people. But I actually think he found the face of Christ in the broken-hearted, unhoused people who are quite taken by an electric bicycle and a man willing to spend the night with them on a cot in a homeless shelter. It made me think of the value of hospitality and welcome in a world that just this past week has made such virtues more and more of a challenge. How we are dividing up us and them, whoever them is. Apparently it changes day to day. How we are excluding people from belonging and of being welcome. We will never fix things from outside ourselves until we provide the hospitality to welcome and to listen to the stories of those strangers who come to our doors. More often than not, we who would bring Christ to those we believe need help will meet Christ in the places that extend us hospitality and welcome. And throughout this little tiny gospel, Jesus keeps saying, that will be your reward. That will be your reward. In Jesus' holy name, amen.